were you saying?
Right, the McLaren Senna was named after Ayrton Senna, who was a driver for the McLaren Formula 1 team in the early 90s, but I was saying that the McLaren team looks promising for 2021 because they've got both Norris and Ricciardo, who of course left Renault after the 2020 season, but Renault will be called Alpine next year, and Ricciardo took Carlos Sainz's seat at McLaren, but that's also okay because Sainz is going to Ferrari. He's replacing Sebastian Vettel at that team, but that's also okay because Vettel is going to Racing Point, which will be called Aston Martin next year, but he's taking Sergio Perez's seat. But Sergio Perez is going to Red Bull next year, and I guess the only person to really miss out is Alex Albon, who is losing his Red Bull seat. But even so, I'm excited to see Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez at Red Bull together, because that will be very exciting, even though, and none of it's going to matter because Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton are still going to win the Constructors and Drivers' Championships, respectively. Wait, what was the question again? Hey, I'm Josh, this is Josh Build Stuff, and today we're not talking about Formula 1, but if you're not into Formula 1, I would recommend you get into it because it's actually very exciting, and if you're looking for an easy entry point, I would watch the Drive to Survive series on Netflix. It's a great introduction to a lot of the drivers and teams that are still in Formula 1 to this day, and the 2021 season looks very promising. But we are not talking Formula 1 today, but we are talking about a McLaren vehicle, which is a Formula 1 team. This is the McLaren Senna, the Technic McLaren Senna to be more specific. This Lego set just came out in January 2021, contains 830 pieces, and only costs $50 here in the US. I say it only costs $50 because that's, I guess, relative to some other Technic sets that have come out recently, like the huge Lamborghini Sian, which I've also built. That's like a $350 set. I think this car and some other cars that have been released recently, this is like the mid-range of Technic vehicles that have come out lately. There was a Corvette released last year, and honestly, my initial opinion on this set, I really like the cars at this scale. They're very detailed, they have a lot of cool features and whatnot. They still look like the cars they're trying to portray, but they're not terribly expensive. But I will give you my full thoughts on my likes and dislikes about this vehicle after the build. The build for this set, man, it kind of hurts the fingers, honestly. Maybe I'm just relatively new to this Technic game still, but honestly, I have an honest-to-goodness callus on my pointer finger from pushing in all the little Technic pins, and it's a very different building experience than traditional Lego. That being said, after you get over that Technic hump, it's still very enjoyable, even though it seems more like you're building very abstract designs out of like the pins and hinge pieces, but in the end, what you're left with is a very decent looking version of a race car. Now, I say this is a decent representation of a race car because I still think that Technic has some limitations when it comes to this scale. You see, when we build like the huge Lamborghini Sian, and I guess there was a Porsche and a Bugatti from a few years ago, those cars are huge and very expensive, but because they're so large, you can capture a lot more of the detail in those builds. But when we scale down the size of the car, and I guess we also scale down the price along with it, it's just a little harder to capture some of the sleek lines and curves that make these like supercar sports cars what they really are. Specifically in like this, which is the McLaren Senna, it has like very distinct looking side panels and doors, and there's like a window through one of the doors, I think, if I'm thinking of the right car, but that's all very hard to do at this scale. That being said, I still think Lego did a really good job of making this car, in a Technic form, look like the actual vehicle, at least as far as I understand it. This, of course, is not supposed to be portraying, I don't know, a run-of-the-mill McLaren Senna, which I guess is still like a supercar, which isn't run-of-the-mill by any stretch of the imagination, but I think this is even supposed to be like the GTR version, which is like the even more souped-up, hyped-up version of that same car. And so along those lines, that brings me to the first thing I don't like about this set, and that is these stickers. Now, us Lego fans will complain about stickers until the cows come home, and me being in Texas, I'm more likely to have cows come home than the rest of you, but I still don't have any cows in my yard. It's not a huge yard, that's besides the point, but I, like most of you, don't like stickers. But when we make these race cars tend to have a bunch of decals and a bunch of other printed details on them, and so I did include all the stickers with this set, but I debated not doing that. But in my opinion, stickers are a detriment to most Lego sets, and I guess they kind of are here, but I'll tell you why I did choose to include them. One, I included stickers because the Lego instructions told me to, and I have a habit of following instructions. That just goes along with my upbringing. Two, because there's at least 1 or 2 printed pieces in this set which have some of that same design, which is matched in the stickers on like the wheel well pieces above the front wheels. And so if those pieces were printed and had some of this cool hexagonal design on them, then the rest of the set wouldn't necessarily look as complete with those stickers left out. And 3, I included the stickers here because it kind of felt like the set itself kind of called for their use. And by that I mean that this is not the depiction of a normal McLaren Senna. I love McLarens. I think the McLaren Senna is a super cool super car. But in this case, this is the McLaren Senna GTR or whatever. It's like the race car version of a McLaren Senna, and it's meant to represent here a very specific vehicle. And so I felt like not including the stickers here would kind of be a dishonor to the vehicle that this set is meant to represent, but who knows? I wouldn't doubt or fault anyone who didn't choose to include stickers with this set. It would be kind of like the big Ghostbusters Ecto 1, which I don't know anyone that has actually put a bunch of those rust stickers on that car. Who wants an Ecto 1 covered in rust when we can have an Ecto 1 that more closely represents the vehicle from our childhood, or in a lot of our cases, our parents' childhoods? Man, that movie is getting old at this point. But stickers aside, which I don't know if I'd include that in my likes or dislikes column, I guess it's kind of a detriment to the set, but stickers aside, there are a lot of things about this set that I do like, but another thing that maybe I don't like is that its scale kind of takes away from the details of the car itself. I said this before, but it's very hard, in my opinion, to capture all of the very intricate, detailed curves and lines of a supercar in this very scaled down version, especially with the limitations of just using the Technic pieces that we have available to us. That being said, a positive of this set, I still think it looks really great. If you're like a die-hard fan of McLarens, maybe you'll be like nitpicky and stuff, but like my 3-year-old still ran into the room and was like, "Oh Dad, a race car." And so if LEGO was going for the idea of making this look like a cool race car that would appeal to, I don't know, 3 to 33-year-olds in my case, then I think LEGO did a really good job. I don't want it to come across like I don't like the look of this set. I think it looks really great. There are a bunch of really cool points and peaks and fins and all kinds of things sticking out of all kinds of places on this car, but like I said before, I really like the look of McLarens, and so I think this car, maybe it's just ingrained in my head, but I think McLarens look cool, and therefore this car, by correlation, also looks cool. But this being a Technic set, and me being an adult purchaser of a Technic set, I do not plan on playing with this set a lot. However, there are a couple of play features included in this set. The first play feature, as I would call it, is that this car has some built-in steering. Obviously, Technic has the ability to use a lot of gears and stuff to make it possible to turn the wheels, and if you turn this little gear on top of the car, then it turns the front 2 wheels. Now, there's nothing crazy complicated about this. There's not like built into a steering column in the steering wheel like some of the larger Technic cars. It's also, this car doesn't have any shocks or suspension or anything, so it's a simpler steering mechanism, but even so, I'm glad that that was included with this car. I'm not crazy about the look of a little gear sticking out of the top of this car, which just kind of screams, "Hey, turn me," because my 3-year-old literally found this gear as the very first thing in this entire set, and he immediately ran in and was like, "Oh, you can turn this gear and it'll turn the wheels," which, I mean, I guess that's what LEGO was going for. They're like, this is a very obvious play feature of this car, but even so, you can easily enough remove that little pin from the top of the car, and the car will look a little better, but you won't be able to turn the wheels. Other than that, and the fact that it's a car that you can roll, there aren't really other play features. The doors both do open, which I'm glad was included. They also, I guess, open in McLaren Senna kind of fashion, where they open upwards. I assume that is how doors on an actual McLaren open, but I'm glad they included that. But again, I don't know that I would call that a play feature. However, just the nature of this car being a race car makes it playable enough, because again, my 3-year-old walked in and was like, "Dad, we should have a battle between this race car and the Jeep," which was just built and reviewed a little while ago. But I mean, I guess all you need are 2 vehicles of generally equal size, and then you can have a battle with them. I have yet to figure out what that actually means, but I imagine it means that my 2 new Technic vehicles will be in more pieces in general in the near future. Also, the hood on this car kind of tilts upwards, but I don't know if that's necessarily a built-in feature or if that just happens to be a byproduct of the way that the thing's built, but even so, my kid again found that feature and was excited about it, so yay! Oh yeah, and what may be the coolest function of this little car. I don't know if I should call it a feature or a function or a detail or whatever, but as you roll this car forward and backwards, there are little cylinders that pop up as you move it, so it kind of stimulates that cylinder actuating motion that we've gotten in a couple of Technic cars before. I think like the mid-range Technic vehicles have had that same feature before. It doesn't have like a whole built-in like gear shifting system like the really big complicated Technic vehicles have, but even so, it's fun to see those little cylinders pop up down, and again, a 3-year-old will absolutely notice that that happens, but he'll just say, hey, those little yellow circles move when the car moves, which, I mean, again, cheers to Lego for including a feature that a kid would notice, but I mean, to me, I'm like, yeah, it's got real like cylinder actuating action built in. That's exactly how I talk when I'm not making a video. But speaking of that cylinder actuating action there, I actually like how simple that mechanism is, technically speaking. Pun intended, I guess, but it's just a couple little like 1x2 Technic axles that push up a couple of loose-fitting brown Technic pins, and those push the little yellow cylinder-looking pieces up and down as the rear wheels turn. So overall, my thoughts on the set are largely positive, if you hadn't already noticed. Sure, there's a bunch of stickers here, but who really cares about all of those? I think the overall look and feel of this car is still pretty great. Also, I think $50 is a really great price point for a car at about this scale. You get, what, 800 and something pieces for that price? I think it's a generally good deal and a good set overall. But let me know if you share my opinions or are starkly against them. In either case, I'd love to hear your opinions in the comments down below. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe, and go watch Drive to Survive on Netflix. It's a very good show, and then I can have more people to talk about Formula One with, because none of my friends watch it, and right now I just have to tell my wife about all the driver change lineup in 2021, and you know, she doesn't care that much, but you know, she humors me, which is all you can ask for in that kind of situation. Again, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.
Really? You think I should?
Yes, you should absolutely get into Formula One next year. Then I'd finally have someone to talk about it with, even though it's a little weird because like first and second place are kind of a given at this point. You know, Mercedes and Red Bull are probably going to take those places, so we're really like trying to see who's going to score third in the Constructors' Championship. That's like the team championship. There's 2 drivers per team. It's a little weird, a little hard to figure out. Like I said, watch that Netflix series, but there's a slight chance that Formula One will return to America next year. And where do they race? When they race the one time in America in the entire season, they race in Austin, Texas. And you know, I actually used to live like right down the street from the Circuit of the Americas, which is where Formula One raced in Austin, and I could literally sit in my backyard on F1 racing.